Hey, welcome. This is Dr. Mike DeBord, president of B3 Sciences. We're here with Dr. Gilles LaMarche, and Dr. LaMarche is a longtime chiropractor as well as one of the top corporate educators at Life University. Dr. Gilles, if you could share with everybody your title down there.
Good morning, Dr. Mike. It's a pleasure to be with you and to be with your audience. I'm the Vice President of University Advancement here at Life University in Marietta, Georgia. And I've been here on the executive team at Life since 2013.
Great, awesome. And then were you practicing, Doc, for a long time before that?
Yes, I practiced in Canada. So I'm born and raised Canadian. I practiced in Canada for 25 years. And as you know, part of my story, what got me out of practice, so I left practice in 2004 and then got into education in 2007.
Okay, awesome. You're also a athlete, and if anybody's paying attention, we recently noticed you went out and got a world championship. Can you give us a little history of your athletic background, and then what compelled you, to a later part in life to go after that crown again?
Absolutely. I was a track athlete in high school and college, and the 400 was sort of my sweet spot race. I was a 400-meter runner, and I also ran anchor on the 4x4. And I didn't compete, I stopped after my first year of college, and then I didn't compete for years. And in the summer of 2022, I had this epiphany that I'd like to train and maybe run like one more track meet in my life. So I remember it was July, and I said to my wife, I think I'm going to start training. I want to run like I want to run one master's track meet, just one more time. And so I started training on my own at the track here at Life University in July of 2022. A month or so into my training, on a Sunday, I met a gentleman who was a former 400-meter runner from Jamaica. And we had this conversation, and he had become a professional coach. So he said he'd never train a master's athlete, but he'd be willing to take me on. So he took me on, and I said, 'Cause he said, what's your goal? I said, I want to run one more track meet. And so he made me do a benchmark 400 with him because 2022, so I was 67 years old. And my fastest time in high school was 48.1. And so when I ran my benchmark with him at age 67, I ran a 2 minute and 33 seconds. I was like, man, I really suck. He said, but you have to understand, you haven't trained for like 50 years. I do the odd 5K, once a month or so, but I was not regular. So anyway, I started training with him. And in December, he said to me, you're actually ready to start competing. And if you want to do really well in the outdoor season, I'd suggest that you start competing in the indoor season. Get a couple meets under your belt so you'll be ready when springtime comes. I was like, okay. So I go online and I see that the Southeast Region U.S. Track and Field Association meet championship is in Norfolk, Virginia in February. So I sign up, and February comes around and I go to Norfolk, Virginia. I run my first 400 in 50 years, and I win the gold medal. And I was like, oh my gosh, this was so fun. So I called my wife and I said, guess what? It qualified me for the national that's going to be in Louisville, Kentucky in a few weeks. So I said, so I'm going to go there. So yeah, good for you, kind of thing. So I get home and I do everything we need to do, book my registration, flight, rental car, hotel, all that stuff. And off I go to Louisville, Kentucky for the national championship. Masters, of course. And unofficially won the 400 there. Officially got disqualified because I stepped on the white line in the first curve twice. It was a very banked track, and I just wasn't used to that. But it qualified me to go to the World Championship in Poland. So there I am, I haven't competed in 50 years. Second week of February, I compete in Norfolk, Virginia. By the end of March, I'm actually running as a member of Team USA in Poland. And that year, 2023 was just a smashing year. Had a great time, won 11 gold medals, won a silver, which was a, my brain just went blank for a second. I ran the anchor. It wasn't the 4x4, but it was, I think one person ran the 400, one ran the 800. Anyway, it was a relay race. But I had a really, really great season. And then in October of 2024, as you know, So I started using BFR with you in, I think in 2023 when I initially met you. And then in 2024, I had a full thickness tear of my rectus femoris muscle, and then multiple tears in my sartorius, my vastus intermedius, my vastus lateralis. So that put me out of commission for a number of weeks, obviously. When I started rehabbing about 3.5, 4 months into this tear, I started using my BFR again, and I got back on the track on the 8th of April, 2024. So I had a 6 month basically layoff of running. And then I went on to continue to train. And on October the 8th of 2025, I won gold in the 400 meters at the World Championship. So it's been a really fun venture, if you like, since 22, starting to train 3 years in, and to go to the World Championship in 2025 and win the gold medal just made it so much more fun. And so I'm continuing to train. I'm going to compete in the indoor season coming up in late January, and then continue to compete until my body says it doesn't want to compete anymore. I'll be 71 the next time I compete. So still having a lot of fun.
That's awesome. So when he had you go out and do a test run, you were over 2 minutes. What did you run at the Worlds? What was your best time?
So my best time at the World's Championship was 111
Wow.
111.58.
So you took off.
111.58. And my goal was to break 111, that I could run like 70 seconds at age 70.
Hmm.
And so I was off, by 0.58 plus. So if I'd been 0.59 seconds faster, I would have run a 110, just short of a 111. So, but I mean, it was still a good time. It's the fastest that I've run as an adult. And that
Hmm.
was exactly 1 year to the day
Hmm.
after I had that full thickness tear of my quadricep muscle. And so, yes, I did all sorts of rehab.
Hmm.
Using the BFR bands from B3 Sciences was one of the tools that I used. Obviously, I followed a really strict nutrition protocol. I have a great chiropractor that took care of me, make sure I was well balanced, make sure my nervous system was functioning well. But there's no doubt that BFR played a role in my recovery and the role in my winning, at the World Championship.
Hmm.
But I guess one of the important tools I've used to rehab my leg and to keep my leg strong, in addition to everything else that I'm doing.
Yeah, so we're talking about blood flow restriction for people that are hearing about it for the first time. And this is what a BFR band looks like. Now, this is the B3 Sciences band. But blood flow restriction was discovered in Japan. They've been studying it for over 30 years. We found it in 2013 in the World Championship Games. Dr. Jim Stray Gunderson found their endurance athletes doing it similar to what Dr. Jill has just shared with you, using it not only for rehab, but for endurance. And the easiest way to equate it, it's kind of a quantum leap in exercise, similar to when we discovered altitude training. We now know that if you train at altitude, it does have some benefits, specifically improving endurance, VO2 max, mitochondrial adaptation. What if you took that altitude mask and put it on the muscle and reduced oxygen into the muscle safely? Well, the results that we've seen over the last 9 years from every level of people in a wheelchair up to Olympic athletes have been similar to kind of that quantum leap forward we saw in altitude training. BFR allows us to create a more efficient fatigue in our muscles than we could get unless we were doing super high intensity exercise, which has some downside and some risk. Dr. Jill and I are no longer 25. We can't do the super high intensity exercise anymore. And this is one of the greatest places that BFR fits. So I'll just give you a quick demonstration, everyone. You just slide the band up the arm or up the upper leg, and it goes in position like that. We simply take the handheld pump and we connect it. And on the band is a number to pump up the band to. This one's 200. And I just feel a gentle squeeze. Now, what did that do? That took this flow of blood going back to the heart and slowed it down. That's all it does. Blood flow restriction or slowing venous outflow. Now, when you do that, that obviously affects the flow of blood in and out of the muscle. It doesn't cut it off, doesn't actually put it at any risk, but what it does do is it reduces available oxygen. How would that affect the average everyday person? Well, imagine walking, but it feels like going up and down the stadium stairs, or imagine jogging and it feels more like a sprint. It allows you to create a more efficient fatigue in your muscles without having to use heavy loads or high intensity. So we'll start with a common area of rehab when somebody gets hurt, like Doc will explain to us in a second, with his quad and sartorius and rectus femoris muscle. It's sometimes difficult to get back to the shape you were in before because you can't create a sufficient fatigue in the muscle. It's been injured, and he shared with you a grade 3 full thickness tear is not a small, that's not a pulled muscle. That's a pretty significant tear, and that requires some pretty long rehab. But when he uses the BFR bands, this allows him to introduce a very light load into his leg, but yet stimulate fatigue in the muscle so that we can speed up the healing process. Mechanical tension speeds it up. Reduction of oxygen through exercise speeds up the hormonal anabolic pathway. So, Doc, if you could share with everybody what you did with your bands once you started your active rehab phase.
So initially, the tear was measured at 4.7 centimeters. That's about 2 inches. So it literally, if you think about it, the muscle detached, and there was a 2 inch gap between the two. So in the physical world, we would say, okay, the only way to reattach that is to have it surgically repaired. And I had a consultation with a very good surgeon who happens to be the surgeon for the Atlanta Braves. So I was very fortunate that through friends of friends, I got in to see that doctor within a couple of days. And he said, pretty easy job for us to sew that up. And as soon as they say, but, there's a problem. But I had developed a blood clot in my lower leg, in my posterior tibial vein. And they talk about provoked clots or unprovoked clots. So unprovoked clots are usually due to some form of disease process. Mine was a provoked clot. It was provoked by the injury, and it would have made the surgical procedure extremely risky. So risky that what he wanted me to do is see, and I did go see a vascular surgeon. She wanted to put a screen in my inferior vena cava, so go basically through my belly button, go in there, put in a screen in case the blood clot dislodged during the leg surgery. So, get put to sleep, do the vascular screen, 3 days later, get put to sleep again, reattach the muscle. 3 days after that, go back in, and if the clot has moved, pull the clot out and then remove the screen, and all that to save your life kind of idea. And I just couldn't pull the trigger on it. I thought that's not worth the risk. It's just my leg. It's not a life-threatening injury, even though it's a painful injury, as you all know. And so I opted to not have the surgery, and I could not move. I mean, I was laid up, completely laid up for about 7 weeks. Then I went to a wheelchair, then, crutches and a cane and all that stuff. But, obviously then I wasn't using my BFR on my right leg, but I was using my BFR on my arms and on my left leg because you had suggested that I do it. And all I was doing was, active exercise. I didn't have weights. I didn't have anything. I was laid up on the couch. Couldn't even get upstairs to my bedroom. But I've got a good friend who has taught me meditation over time, and he explained the meditation he wanted me to do, and his name is Joe Dispenza. Some of you may know Dr. Joe Dispenza. And he said, what I want you to do is in your mind, I want you to multiple times a day to run your 400s in your mind, and every single step from runners on your mark, getting into the block, set, go, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, and get yourself to the point where in your mind, you're running a 400 meter in the best time that you ran that season. And at that time, it was 1:13:65 was the best time I'd run. So it took me a few days to get to do that because at the beginning, my brain wouldn't even allow me to get into the block. So I'd open my eyes and go, okay, dude, this is ridiculous. This is just in your mind. You're not really doing this. But the injury was so severe that my brain was stopping me from doing anything. Anyway, the long and the short is that on MRI, the tear at 4.7 centimeters, 9 weeks later, that muscle was reattached. And, like I say, in the physical world, we would all think that's impossible. But in the quantum world, when we understand that the body was made to be self-healing, it's possible. So a couple weeks into that, at week 9, I was now walking with a cane. Somewhere around week 12 or 14, I started using the BFR on both legs, doing very, very light squats. It's about all I could do. And I couldn't even go all the way down. I mean, I could come down 10 or 20 degrees and I'd go back up 10 or 20 degrees. And I slowly started rehabbing myself at home. And like I said, I didn't make it to the track until literally 6 months from the injury. I got on the track on the 8th of April, so exactly 6 months to the day. So that's how I started using the BFRs. But during the injury, I was using them like just doing bicep, laying on the couch, doing bicep curls, doing this, and wearing them for the way you had suggested, 8 to 10 minutes. And then I would take them off. I'd do it a couple times a day just to enhance my physiology. And that's how I've used them. And so now I use them on the track 3 times a week. And I always start by doing squats. And then I do short, like 30, I'll do like 30-meter sprints, walk for 30, 30-meter sprints, walk for 30. That's one of the trainings that I do using BFR. Other training that I do is like jogging. Again, I always start with squats. I'll bring it to a burn. So for me, it's somewhere between 12 and 20 squats, depending on what I did maybe the day before. But I bring it to that hot burn. And so sometimes I'll just do, a light jog. And I'm on a stopwatch. I'll do 8 to 10 minutes. And then I take them off, and then I do basically a walking break. I'll walk around the track a couple times, and then I do my track training. So I've been using BFR more as part of my warm up to get myself to that fatigue point, and then after a rest period, then actually do my training.
Wow, that's awesome. So you indicated get to a fatigue point, light jogging, air squats wouldn't typically bring you to a fatigue that we understand has a anabolic effect, has a nitric oxide effect. These are all things that help warm up, improve performance, speed healing. Tell everybody, what do you notice different? Let's say you're going to go do some air squats and then you put the bands on and do air squats. What do you feel different?
Well, obviously, I get to a fatigue point a lot faster when I'm wearing the bands than when I'm not wearing the bands. So I would say it probably cuts down my warm-up time by probably at least 50%, where I feel like my body is ready. Now, I
Hmm.
mean, I'm not taking you through my entire routine, but what my coach has me doing is that my initial warm-up is like a half a mile light jog. That's what I do when I get to the track. Before I stretch, before I do anything, I do like a half a mile light jog. Then I do all the stretches that he wants me to do. Then I activate using BFR, and then I go on to do my training.
Awesome.
So my
Awesome. What
my
do you,
my warm up's almost like 45 minutes.
oh, wow. Now, when you were using it for rehab, you were doing a technique that we call work a non-injured body part. For our listeners, one of the things that is very important to adaptation physically is the anabolic signal, the signal of creating fatigue, which is triggered by blood lactate, which is lactic acid. The burn you feel. That turns on our growth hormone, and then that starts the anabolic process of turning on the thyroid, specifically turning on IGF-1 out of the liver to create the protein synthesis. This anabolic fatigue that Doc is accessing during rehab is typically not obtainable. Why? Because he can't lift heavy weights. He can't do a CrossFit class. He can't go out on the track and do a high intensity exercise session. So by using the bands when he's injured, again, on non-injured body parts, he's not putting it on the leg with the quad tear. He's conditioning his body using other body parts and getting a fatigue that is pretty tough to obtain, right? When you're sitting on a couch with a full,
Yeah.
quad tear like he had.
I mean, at first, Doc, I couldn't even sit. I mean, I was literally supine. I was like on my back 24 hours a day. Um, for at least the first 3 or 4 weeks. So I couldn't even sit up to eat. I would my wife would prop me up, to put some food into my body, but I couldn't sit up. The pain in the leg was so intense.
Wow.
But if I was supine and I didn't move, I had no pain.
Hmm.
So I did what I could. Like I said, I put my BFR on. I just leave my BFR in my arms. They were there all the time. I'd pump them up. I'd, take
Hmm.
the air out. They were just there. And I'd do it a few times a day. Like I said, I was pretending that I had weights in my hand and I was doing all sorts of movements to bring myself to a burn. And then I would just take it off. And I did the same thing with my left leg. So I was doing anything from, flexing my knee up high, straightening my leg, doing straight leg lifts with my leg on the left side because I couldn't do anything with the right one.
Yeah, and especially for the chiropractors out there, if you start paying attention to sporting events, like you'll see Alcaraz, the number one tennis player on the world, you'll see him walking on and off the court a lot of times with our band on, and you'll see him moving and maybe hitting a few balls. He's doing an anabolic warm-up. He's stimulating growth hormone and nitric oxide before he plays. If you look at a Major League Baseball dugout now, you'll see these pitchers come off the diamond. Not all of them, but you'll see a lot of them because they're learning about this. And instead of the ice pack, you'll see them in the dugout doing this, and they'll have a BFR band on. They're creating fatigue. When you create that fatigue or burn, you turn on many metabolic processes. One of them is nitric oxide. So that when you get the pump of using it in the burn and you take the band off, one of the major stimulators of nitric oxide is reperfusion. The stress on the arterial wall of the blood flow, kind of like opening up a fire hose, is a strong nitric oxide stimulator. They're finding that that is actually more beneficial for recovery in a lot of these cases than ice. So you're seeing all these different ways that people are using BFR. Now let's jump forward to performance. Anytime you can elevate the anabolic signal, you can take a person from where they're at physically and you can move them closer to their human potential. I explain it like this. Imagine Doc's going to go out and train and do his normal track training. And then next month, he's going to do the same training, but somebody's going to give him some growth hormone. Now, we know Doc's not doing anabolic steroids, but let's just imagine that somebody's going to give him a little extra growth hormone. What would happen? We all know what would happen. Your same training in a different month would be more effective. You're anabolic. You've raised the growth hormone signal. This is why so many athletes are using BFR. And maybe they're not using it to actually run faster, but they're using it in their outside of track training to elevate their anabolic signal. And you're seeing athletes like Atlanta United Football Club, Mario Cruz, right down in Doc's backyard, uses these bands year rounds on their soccer players. LeBron does it. This is one of the way he trains. Mahomes is doing this. So being able to elevate your anabolic signal, whether you're sitting on the couch or out on the track or in the gym, has significant benefits. And Doc, maybe one of the things you might have noticed is, when you do BFR, you get a little energy spike, you feel a little bit younger, right? Hopefully this will be one of the tools that'll keep you running into your 70s, right?
Well, I'll be 71 in exactly 2 months, so I'm not too far. But I think I could continue doing this until in my 80s. And I think the impact that track and field had on me when I was young was it kept my energy really, really vibrant. And obviously, it kept me focused on the importance of staying healthy and being healthy and doing good things for me. And I've just reintroduced that into my lifestyle, since age 67. So, um, I mean, there's nothing to stop you if you do the right things the right way and you're consistent. It's all about being consistently committed to doing something that's good for you. And, training is good for me. Using BFR is good for me. Having good nutrition and, drinking good water is good for me. And I feel great.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for the docs out there listening, this isn't new to the chiropractic world. I've been traveling around for 6 years now. I was just at the Colorado Chiropractic Association, Nebraska, Wisconsin. I'm going to be at the National next year, New Jersey. BFR is becoming a hot topic in the chiropractic world, and B3 Sciences, I like to believe, leads the way. We have over 1,000 health professionals that have now implemented, especially for chiropractors, right? We've got the baseline foundational chiropractic treatment that should be part of every one of your athletes' lives. And then most of us know about good nutrition and water, but BFR is a new technology that many of you listening have not experienced or implemented in your practice. And we make that easy, first and foremost, for you to experience. So if you're listening today, I don't want you to think about implementing BFR in your practice right now. What I want you to think about is, how could I personally use this? I want to practice longer. I want to be better service to my patients. I drag in the afternoon. I need something at lunch. I want to go run a 5K. Doc, what would you recommend all the chiropractors think about for their own, personal use of using BFR?
I mean, I think if I was still in practice, knowing what I know now and seeing what it's done, for my life as a track athlete, that also translates to my everyday when I have like long business meetings at the institution, or we have executive team meetings that sometimes like last 4 hours. I see it giving you a lot more endurance. I see it giving you a lot more strength. What I didn't do that I wish I had done in retrospect, I should have been thinking sort of research based, but I didn't, was to actually have measurements done of my legs at different levels, like whatever, from the groin 6 inch down and then whatever halfway or right in the middle of the quad, and have all these measurements done. Because I can tell you that all of my pants got tighter around my legs using BFR, not around my waist, because those are fine, but around my legs, I was like, okay, it's time to get some new clothes because I could feel how my legs, my thighs have gotten bigger and stronger. They're not back to where I was when I was 17, but they're certainly a far cry advance compared to where I was, at 66 before I started doing what I'm doing now. So I think because it's such a short duration, we didn't talk about time, but I never wear my BFR bands more than 10 minutes. Three times a week, I'm basically wearing for 10 minutes. And it makes a wonderful difference. So if docs are say, oh, I'm too busy, I don't train because I just don't have the time. Imagine doing a 10-minute training every single day in your practice as a warm-up before you start seeing your patients. That's all it would take. And I would say, based on what I experienced, that you would see a change and feel a change. You may not have a measurable change as far as, taking a measurement of legs or biceps or whatever, but you will feel a change in your endurance, in your strength, probably in 4 to 6 weeks. That was my experience anyway.
Yes. And if we go back to the basic physiology and docs, all of this is rooted in science. You'll get a link to our website when the podcast is done here in a few minutes. You can go read all the studies. There's studies on the anabolic effect at all age levels, senior men, senior women, middle-aged, young athletes, elevating growth hormone naturally. There's studies on performance, mitochondrial adaptation, strength, all of the things that we typically get from high intensity exercise, but you're doing something short for 8 to 10 minutes. And if we leave you with anything, we're all busy. I'm a busy executive. Doc's busy in his world, as an educator and administrator at the Awesome Life University, which I hadn't been in a long time. Man, that's a beautiful campus. I was just down recently. Absolutely beautiful. Looking forward to going back and hopefully speaking about BFR. But imagine not having to do the 45 minutes to an hour and risking injury, interfering with your practice, interfering with your time, but being able to do it 8 to 10 minutes, and you can do it right in the office. You can incorporate it if you're already an athlete, and being able to get results as if you trained 3, 4 times as hard. That's BFR. And now, if you look across the landscape, it's in every major sports team's training room. It's now being implemented in many of the colleges across the country. And what I'm most excited about being a former chiropractor, being a former CCSP, is that we can get this out to the chiropractic world because I believe that's the best way to introduce it to the public and our patients because most of them are coming to us looking for not only chiropractic, but alternative ways that we can use new technologies in our practice. And that makes it a perfect fit for the chiropractors out there. So, Dr. Jill, thanks for joining us today. Anything else you'd like to share about
I'll probably
maybe?
say, yeah, our plan is to have you speak at Light Vision Extravaganza, September 17th to the 19th, 2026. It's going to be at the beautiful Renaissance Waverly Hotel. We've already signed a contract with them. And so plan on the docs listening in. If you want to come and get your CE hours, you can come to Life University and do that for a really reasonable fee. It starts at $149 if you register in advance. I believe that's what the fee is. And our goal is to raise it to 249. So I'm not sure where we're at right now. So I probably shouldn't have said that. But I mean, it's a really reasonable fee. And our goal is to have Dr. Mike speak on BFR. We've got an entire track that's going to be dedicated to sports chiropractic over a 3-day period. And one of the speakers on that track is going to be Dr. Mike. So September 17th to the 19th. And of course, on September 18th will be chiropractic's 131st birthday. So we'll definitely have a celebration or at least sing happy birthday chiropractic. And we look forward to welcoming you, Dr. Mike, to
Thank
our
you.
event and welcoming all the chiropractors who have an interest in getting their CE credits. And if they have a specific interest in sports chiropractic, like I said, one entire track for 3 days is going to be dedicated to sports chiropractic.
That's awesome. So, Doc, last question. What are you going to run in the future? What's the new goal? Because I know the goal is not 111 anymore.
No, the goal is definitely not 111. Obviously, I've got to break 110 first. So I know I'm going to break 110 this coming season. And I think that as I continue to train, and my coach thinks I can break 105.
Wow.
So if I could break, I went from 233 when I started training in 2022. 3 years later, I ran a 111.58 that was good enough to win the world championship. So I think before age 65, I might be able to run 65 seconds. So if I could do that, I'd be happy. I know that, the sub 60 seconds is unlikely, obviously, at my age. And the fact that I ran a 48.1 at age 17 doesn't really mean anything when you haven't trained for 50 years. So I will never see a sub 60, though some of my friends say, but you shouldn't say that. I agree. But if I could get myself down to 65 seconds, I would be
Wow.
thrilled.
Yeah, that'd be another world
Because I'm having
championship,
the
wouldn't
most
it?
important thing is I'm having fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
was on the track this morning. My wife was up and I was up at 5:30. She's like, "You're going already?" I was like, "Yeah, I mean, it's the weather's a little cool, but of course she's looking at me, she said, "Are you sure you're warm enough? You should have another thickness on." And I got into the track, and after I did my training, I literally had to take a layer off because I was already sweating, and it was
Mhm.
probably just 40 degrees. But if you're consistent, I think maybe the message for us to remember is that change comes with consistency of effort. And
Mhm.
so those of you who might consider using BFR bands, change will come with consistency of effort. If you use them 8 to 10 minutes, and Dr. Mike can guide you more. Like I said, I only use them 3 times a week. Maybe if I wasn't an athlete, I should use them every day. I don't know. But I use them 3 times a week when I'm on the track. And they've made a significant difference in, I think how I perform. Certainly it warms me up a lot faster and I'm performing well.
Yeah.
It's an
Yeah.
important tool. It's been
Yeah.
an important tool. So
Well,
they're
thanks.
always in my gym bag.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And you can
Thank you.
travel with them.
Pleasure.
You can travel with them
Oh
too,
man,
right?
it's so easy, right? I got my little case, but that little case actually fits into my gym bag, so it's always in my gym bag.
Yeah. Well, Doc, thanks for joining us today. It was great to have you on and hear your story. Hopefully that motivates, other chiropractors out there to get back in the game, right? Because we got to look at exercise as a necessity, right? Chiropractic, good sleep, good nutrition, exercise. You combine those and boy, a lot of opportunities open up. So thanks for joining us today, Dr. Jills.
My pleasure, Dr. Mike. Thank you so much.